Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Cantley. I'm a past national president of Kappa Kappa Psi and a life member. I'll introduce myself a little bit more as we get our presentation started. But we're so excited to have everybody here for week two of Kappa Kappa Psi's National Month of Leadership. I'm so grateful that you've chosen to spend some time with me this evening. And whether you're joining live or maybe tuning in later, I hope this is a great time for you to just plug in, think about the fraternity, and think of this about as a time for you to grow as a leader. As I said, February is our National Month of Leadership and dedicated time for brothers, active alumni, anyone who really wants to get on track with this, to pause and reflect and invest in their leadership journey. Leaders is not something we turn on only when we hold a title. It's something that we all sign up for as brothers. It's part of our values. It's part of who we are. It's why we're in this organization. It's how we serve our bands, our chapters, and how we carry ourselves as human beings and members of Kappa Kappa Psi throughout our daily lives. This month exists because leadership development doesn't happen by accident. It happens through reflection, conversation, learning, and practice. And we hope that you're taking some time to do that with us tonight. And as we grow as leaders, our chapters become better, our service becomes stronger, our bands become better, and we're starting to leave our legacy as members of Kappa Kappa Psi. So we're excited that you all are here with us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and get things started through the Zoom screen right here. I'm pretending like I'm tech savvy. I'm not at all tech savvy, but we're making it happen. So thank you again for joining us. Today is really talking about balancing empathy and accountability. And I was talking to Bong before we got started. This was a presentation I did for like the NCD during the pandemic. And I brought it back up because I hadn't thought about it in a while. And I was like, yeah, I really want to talk about this some more. It's a part of how I try to operate as a leader that I'm passionate about. And I looked at the presentation and I immediately said, I'm changing everything. So it was a good exercise for me to re-engage with this topic. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to share with you all today. So my name is Adam Cantley. As I said, life member, past national president. I was initiated in the Omicron chapter at West Virginia University. And as I'm introducing myself, throw your name in the chat. Tell us who you are, where you're from, where you're signing in from this evening as well, so we can see where folks are coming from. I was a saxophone player, am a saxophone player, probably not as good as I used to be, never as good as I should have been, but I tried really hard and practiced a lot. But it was a great experience for me to be in that space. Professionally, I work at the University of Delaware in good old Newark, Delaware, where I serve as the Associate Vice President for Student Wellbeing Support and Advocacy. So I manage our Dean of Students and her teams around conduct and support and disability support services. And then I also oversee our Student Health Center, our Counseling Center, and our Wellness and Health Promotion programs. A lot of great areas that help students navigate their college experience and deal with those bumps in the road that inevitably happen when you're going through your college experience. On a personal note, I'm a beach lover. I go to the beach all the time in the summer. We have beaches in Delaware, if you did not know. Huge theater fan. I go to New York as many times as I can afford to go to New York, take the train up to see a show or two. I'm super excited. If you don't know, Titanic is coming to Broadway. It's a ridiculous show. Read about it. It's all about Titanic, the movie, but set to the music of Celine Dion as if she was the narrator on the Titanic. It's amazing, hilarious. RuPaul's Drag Race savant. I know more about RuPaul's Drag Race than anybody ever should. And I'm destructively extroverted as a human. Like I could be totally in my pajamas and getting ready for bed, and a friend be like, "Hey, do you want to like come out and like meet up and say hey?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm ready, totally." And I'll totally change and go out because I just love being with people and connecting with community. And I'm a dog dad of two, and that's a recent development. We just got a new dog 3 weeks ago. We rescued a little French bulldog named Gigi. Pippin's our other French bulldog we've had. He's 5. He is giving a lot of side eye to his new sister, but we're living it. It's a good time. So, as I said, today we are talking about empathy and accountability. And a lot of people see those as opposing forces, but they're both so vital for leadership um, in our chapters. So, I would love to hear from somebody of how you would define empathy. You can put that in the chat, or you could raise your hand and then I'll call on you and you can unmute. But does anybody have a thought on how they would define empathy for folks? And I love seeing all the hellos and highs and where people are from. Great to see everybody. But does anybody have a thought on empathy that they would like to share, how they define that? not, it's okay. It's a big, scary room. It's being streamed on YouTube. I understand that. I'm empathetic to maybe you aren't as extrovert as I am. I'm going to say, Annie, thank you. Empathy is being able to listen to others and connect with them in order to understand and find a way to meet them. Absolutely. I love that. And that's a lot of the concepts that we're going to talk about. And it really is the great transition I needed for my next slide. So it's seeking to understand experiences, feelings, contexts, and challenges. It's really about seeking to understand. We're going to talk a little bit about how we do that. A lot of people confuse empathy and sympathy, but they are very different. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about three types of empathy: compassionate empathy, cognitive empathy, affective empathy. So that's where we're going to really start this. So, really, that first part is seeking to understand the experiences, feelings, contexts, and challenges of other human beings. So, if we are seeking to understand, how do we start to understand someone? And it's a simple answer. Don't overthink it. And if you want to put it in the chat, you can answer it in one word if you really think. Listening. Thank you, Kayla. Kayla's a winner. That's it. Communicate, listen. That is exactly it. If we really want to start to build empathy with our brothers, the folks in our band, the people that we're leading, we start by listening. And it's about talking less and listening more. Now, talking less, that's a hard one for me. I like to talk. That's who I am as a person. But if we are seeking to really connect with someone, I think we can all speak from our own experiences. The way that we do that, and the way we feel we've connected to someone, is by getting the opportunity to share and feel like we've been heard, right? So if we want to build empathy, step number one is just listening to people. And there's things that you can do and little things that you can say to help people know that you're listening. First is just really repeating things back to them, giving them the opportunity to share and say, what I heard you saying was, and then kind of repeat that back. And then just say, is that correct? Like, did I get that right? So it's affirming what you heard and then getting like that you have interpreted that correctly or you've restated it correctly, and then them affirming that. So it's really you really saying, this is what I've heard. I think this is how I understood it. Am I right? And that's really putting it back on that person. And you're trying to get their experience, not through your lens, but through their lens. It's okay to say, something like, you sound frustrated. I have been there. I've been frustrated. What I'm hearing is frustration. Is that what I'm picking up on? Absolutely. Affirming emotions, you have every right to be angry, sad, happy, etc. Whatever that emotion is. I was recently dealing with a friend who a relationship ended, and he's like, I'm really sad today. And I was like, well, yeah, of course you're sad today, but like, it's fair to be sad today. When relationships end, you should be sad. So it is okay to affirm people's feelings. And then just asking people to tell me about it so I can try to understand. And then this last point, I think this is where sympathy and empathy often meet in the wrong place. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, this is really hard, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do XYZ without checking with that person. You've told me all this. It's really hard and terrible. What do you need from me? And not trying to put your feelings or your actions upon somebody, but just saying, what do you need from me right now? Because really, maybe all they needed was just to kind of tell them about that or say something to someone. Maybe they really aren't looking for advice. Maybe they're just wanting to share and have somebody sit with them and be in that place with them. So it is 100% okay to say, what do you need from me? And really being there. Thanks, Kristen. I appreciate the shout out. Um, Whenever you are seeking to understand and have these conversations, here's some behaviors that are going to help you out. Number one, put away your phone and other devices. That's hard for me as I'll say an elder millennial. I'm kind of on the cusp of millennial Gen X. I pick the day of what I want to be and how it suits me, which is pretty Gen X. But I know enough about technology to be dangerous, which is very millennial. Um, is so put away your phone and other device and really just sit with someone is really tough. Allow people to tell their story. You may think it's too old of a reference. You may think you know, but you have no idea. Some of you may know that reference from an old TV show. But when you hear something, allow people to tell you and just listen without comment or judgment. Just do your best. Now, we're always going to have some judgment. We're people, it happens, but you don't need to comment on it. Just listen to what they say. Ask clarifying questions, or as he said, restate what you heard. And then this is the big thing. Just remember, you can never know exactly how someone feels in a moment. You can get close. You could have a very similar experience. You can understand everything that they're saying, but there might be some other things they're not telling you. There might be some things that are at play that they're not comfortable sharing, but you're doing your best to try to get as close to being with them, understanding that feeling, and connecting to that feeling as much as you can. And these are all things that help you develop relationships and build trust, right? That's the goal of what we're trying to do here. So thinking about these behaviors and how you can incorporate them in conversations is really powerful. Um, I have a friend and we have what we call like no phone time, where we literally both like put them in our back pockets or whatever, and it's like that's our time just to really check and be present with one another. And those are some of the most powerful conversations that I have. I also have a group of friends. If you've never done this, we go out to dinner, we all stack our phones in the middle of the table, and the first one to grab it, we say they have to pay the bill. And you get like get some passes like emergency or something like that. Maybe your mom calls. Yes, you want to answer that. But you're not allowed to touch your phone throughout the whole meal. And really trying our best to listen to one another, tell stories, and be present so that we build these relationships and this trust with one another, and people feel like they have one another's attention because that makes people feel valued and important. I think that's all what we kind of really want at the end of the day. So, when we think about sympathy versus empathy, the best way that I can really illustrate the difference is that point two, right? Empathy is trying to feel some way, the same way as a person. Sympathy is seeing how they are from your point of view. So feeling sorry for someone, that's sympathy. But feeling sorrow with someone is empathy, right? So you're understanding like, oh my gosh, you lost a relative and that's really hard. And losing someone is very hard. Or I feel bad for you because you lost a relative is very different. So what you're trying to do is come from their point of view first. And that's what empathy is. Sympathy is coming from your point of view first and then feeling bad about that or things like that. And a lot of times that comes with, oh, maybe I should send them flowers, or you know what, let me talk to them about how they should connect to therapy, or putting all these kinds of things on them about how you want to fix the problem versus just kind of sitting there, offering comfort, letting them talk through it, and then asking them what they need. There's nothing wrong with sympathy. It's just maybe not the time for it, right? So it's okay to be sympathetic towards someone, but what we're talking about is being empathetic towards someone and it's trying to understand, not hearing what they say and then interpreting it for ourselves and how we want to view it. It's kind of tricky. I would encourage you. These are like Google is a thing. Like dive into this topic, dig into it, see what you can find about it. There's tons of stuff out there about the difference between empathy and sympathy. And if you're like me, you will find this image that I found, and I was like, "Ooh, I like this one," and it helps me understand it. So you can find those for yourself when you're out there. Now, as I said, we were going to talk about three different types of empathy because it doesn't mean that you just sit there and action isn't involved. There is action with empathy if you've been given the green light to do that. So I talked about these three types of empathy. So let's start with cognitive empathy, and that is being able to rationally understand a person's thoughts and feelings. You putting yourselves in their shoes. Like somebody has disclosed to you that a relationship is ended. I've had a relationship end. I think I can kind of understand how they're feeling. I hear what they're saying. They're saying they're sad. I know what it's like to be sad. You're really thinking about it from a very cognitive thought place. Effective empathy is about feeling those feelings, right? Like I'm an empathetic person. If you've ever done strengths, Clifton Strengths Finder, empathy is in my top five. If somebody sits and cries with me, there's a 99.9% chance I'm going to cry with them. I just naturally connect and I try to be attentive to other people's feelings. And so that is about really being present with the emotion. So if you want to think about cognitive as like the thought rational part, um, the affective empathy is about being with the emotions of someone. And then compassionate empathy is really understanding kind of the feelings of what and wanting to do something about it and really leaning on them to tell you how to provide help, right? And what that help could look like. I think we've all had friends who are struggling and we've wanted to help. And sometimes the hardest thing is when they won't let us, but sometimes it's what's right to do. But going back to that statement of what you need is really important, and asking them what they need and then doing your best to do that is the best way of compassionate empathy. Um, so those are three ways to kind of just frame empathy. And I think a lot of people sometimes get caught up in empathy just being like, I'm sitting with someone and I'm trying to show emotion and value them, but that doesn't mean I don't do anything. No, that doesn't. There's ways for you to be helpful and kind of make action around empathy. The one thing that I will say about empathy, showing empathy to our brothers and sisters is an action tied to our rituals and values, period. There's nothing else I need to say about that. But I will because I like to talk. If you think about our ritual and the lessons that we learn in the last part of that, which I don't know who's watching this, so I will not disclose, um, there's so much that is tied to empathy and support and being in community and understanding and being together that makes up our organization. And so that is why this is so important to being not only a leader, but just a brother in our organization and to our sisters of Tau Beta Sigma. It is something that we have all made a promise to do through our ritual that we have gone through. So that's a little bit about just kind of the starts of empathy and how we frame that. And really, as a leader, it's about being with the people and building trust around them. So we're going to flip the script to talk about accountability. And the way we'll do that is by starting with this. Holding our brothers and sisters accountable is an action tied to our values and our ritual. Accountability is 100% also who we are as an organization. Think about our ritual, think about what we go through, think about the things we learn, the promises that we make. This is not a secret in our ritual. We all make a promise, we take an oath, and we say we're going to do something as a member of Kappa Kappa Psi. It is the very basis. It is the last thing that you agree to do before you become a member and in full standing at our organization is you make a promise and you say you will be accountable to that. So holding ourselves and our brothers and sisters accountable is also tied to our rituals and values. And here is why I think this is important. So, in a previous life, I was involved with fraternity and sorority life on college campuses, advised fraternities and sororities. And I would sit with these leaders and they would tell me about a member that has consistently caused problems and done XYZ. And I say, well, how haven't you hold them accountable? Like, you have a process to do that. You could put them through your standards committee. You could use your process to remove them as a member. And they're like, but they're my brother or they're my sister. And, I want to give them one more chance and I can't do that to them. And I'm like, yeah, but were they thinking about being your brother and your sister when they did XYZ thing that got your whole chapter in trouble? Like, so it doesn't absolve them. And like, I'm trying to be empathetic and understand that they're struggling. And I'm like, yeah, but were they being empathetic to you whenever they were thinking about the things that they were doing? And why that is. So accountability and empathy go hand in hand, and let's start to talk about how that can be. So I pose a very similar question. What is accountability? So if somebody wants to unmute or somebody wants to put something in the chat about what is accountability, how would you define that? And you can do it in simple terms. Nothing powerful or long is needed. Just how would you define accountability? Following through with what you said you would do is about being able to not only say when you're wrong, but able to hold yourself to standards you set upon yourself, taking responsibility for your actions, especially if they hurt someone else. These are great. I appreciate you, Kayla, Annie, Julia. Absolutely. Oh, making sure your brothers and sisters hold up the standards they say they will. Thank you, Joshua. Yes, these are all things that are tied to accountability. And really, accountability is holding members, including yourself, responsible to expectations, standards, commitments, our rituals and values, one another, staying true to your word. Thank you, Jamaris. Or our chapter, band, and community. That's what that is. And it is about making sure that we are saying what we do is what we're going to do and that everybody knows about that. Staying true to your word is probably the best example or what you know to be the expectations of what you're supposed to be doing. Thumbs up, thumbs down. You can use the reaction. You can put it in the chat. Who's comfortable with holding others accountable? If you are, put a thumbs up. If you're not, put a thumbs down. Who's comfortable with accountability? I see some thumbs up. I see more thumbs up. It's okay if there's a thumbs down. It's okay if maybe you're not a conflict person. There's a thumbs down. I appreciate you in your honesty. Yeah, it's okay. A lot of people struggle with this. A lot of people, I need a thumbs in the middle, Paula. Absolutely. Of course, Paula, the contrarian that she is. I'm holding you accountable to being a contrarian. Um, I thought about that, but I wanted to force people to choose. Uh, so I think that is totally fine. And I think, Paula, what I appreciate about you acknowledging, it's also dependent upon the space I am in. Like at work, I'm the boss. So like it's I have to be accountable because somebody's gonna hold me accountable and like that's part of my job. But with my friend group, I'm probably sometimes I'm like, ugh, like we just gotta move on. Maybe I just don't want to deal with it. So it could be dependent upon the situation. But I think what I'm hoping today is if you are comfortable with accountability, I'm hoping to talk to you about a way that you can hopefully increase that comfort. And if you're not, maybe demystify some of this so that you can feel a little bit more comfortable being accountable. Thank you, everybody, for participating. I love all the thumbs and things like that. So, where does accountability start? And this is a tougher question than where does empathy start? But what's the first thing we need to hold ourselves and others accountable? Do people have thoughts on that one? It's okay if we stump the audience. I would love it. Respect. I think respect is absolutely a part of that. I can't. Respect is huge, but I'm going to even take it even simpler. Clear expectations. Olivia, winner. Yes, I appreciate you. I love this. Expectations and goals are needed to hold people accountable. If I don't know what's expected of me, or if I don't know where we are going, I can't be held accountable to that. And I think that is where so many people fail as leaders and especially group leaders. We are not good about telling people what the expectations are and what the goals are and making sure everybody understands that because I think we can all think of a time, whether in Kappa Kappa Psi or in any other situation, where we've tried to hold somebody accountable, and the first thing they said is, "Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know I was supposed to do that. That's part of my job. Nobody told me that was part of my job." Right? So that is a very often excuse, sometimes a real thing that they really did not know that it was a part of their job. But goals and expectations are the base of holding people accountable. You have to know what those are, and not only for others, but for yourself. And I think if you're going to be a leader, to me, it's an expectation that you're holding the people you're leading accountable, right? Like, so that's something that you even have to know within yourself to be kind of with that. And I see a lot of people talking about how it is important to make sure you know what you who you are and what those expectations are for yourself. So I appreciate everybody throwing that in the chat as well. So let's talk about the difference between expectations and goals because they are very different, but people talk about them like they're the same, and they are not the same. Um, Expectations are standards oriented and defines minimum responsibilities. All members in Kappa Kappa Psi have expectations, whether that is to be in band is an expectation, maybe. Well, it should be if you're an active member. Like you need to be in band to be an active member. You need to go to meetings. That is an expectation. Um, Now, if you take on leadership, you have different expectations. If you are, let's say, treasurer or finance, whatever that is in your chapter, you probably have an expectation to make sure the counts are up to date. If you're a secretary, you have an expectation to take minutes. If you're a president, you have expectations to do these things. So you have these different things. So there's so many things. Refer to documents and procedures for the basics. There are things that exist, whether it's our constitution, the resources that have been put out around chapter operations that Kappa Kappa Psi has provided for folks that talk about what these expectations are. Now, here's the big thing. They need to be known and discussed, right? Everybody should know what the expectations are of a chapter president in a chapter meeting. Like you should talk about those. As chapter president, it is my job to do these things. These are the things that I am expected to do. As a vice president of membership, I am expected to do these things. Everybody should know about them so that everybody has a sense of accountability for those things happening and being able to talk to you about them. They are non negotiable. Taking minutes as a secretary is not something like, "Mm, it's not for me." No, you have to do that, right? I'm not going to deposit the money today. I think that's not my job anymore as treasurer, right? I don't want to make the agenda. No, those are non-negotiable. They have to happen, right? And they sure, like, you want to make sure everybody understands their responsibility and those of the others. And this is where empathy can kind of play into that. Ask clarifying questions, repeat back those expectations, make sure you understand them, document and share, write them down and share. If Akila was here, she'd be like, am I in an HR meeting? Because it's kind of like that. Like, document, share, let people know what's going on, and then openly discuss what happens if they are not met, right? People need to know, if I'm not meeting expectations, this is what you can expect. There are no surprises. And a lot of times, people that are uncomfortable with accountability, the biggest hurdle is they're like, this person has no idea what's going to happen. But if you've done these things where you've set the expectations, you've shared the expectations, you've documented them, you've sent them out through your chapter, whatever, however you communicate with one another, you've talked openly about what happens if you don't meet those expectations. So when you go to brother so and so who has missed 6 meetings, it's not a surprise. I've missed 6 meetings. We told you what would happen if you missed 6 meetings. Now we're at this point, right? And that kind of fear at least goes down a little bit because you at least know everybody is on the same page. So expectations are really about the baseline, the basement, and what that is. Oh, Julia, I love this. Did it unspoken expectations that active members felt so we could clearly define them? Yes, I always talk about making the implicit explicit. So things that people think you're supposed to do, just go ahead and say them out loud, so people know that is really important. And sometimes you learn that some of those things that are unspoken really aren't that great of expectations, and you get rid of them. So good job. So goals tell us where we're going, right? It's sometimes you miss a goal, and that's okay. Or sometimes a goal changes. They're growth oriented, they can evolve, right? So goals sometimes are missed, and that's okay, and you learn from them. Sometimes they're overshot, that's all right. Things like that. But goals are built off people meeting their expectations, right? Like, if you're not doing the basics, then you can't start moving towards these growth areas. They should be set and discussed with individual chapter committee team. It allows for input, creates buy-in, discuss how meeting expectations meet those goals, making sure people understand that, and really get a good sense of what that would be. And then talk about what success looks like when you meet a goals. We're not going to get into like a smart goals thing there, but I think a lot of you at this point in your collegiate career, or someone has talked to you about a smart goal, or how to set a goal and what they should be. So really talking about that in a real sense. Like, if your goal is to increase your membership by 10%, what does that look like? What if we, how many people does that mean? What does success look like? What happens if we don't? Things like that. But to meet that goal, the VPM needs to get the recruitment information out on time. People need to show up to these events and do all their expectations so that you can meet that goal. So really talk about what that looks like. And once again, it's all about documenting and sharing. Because when you have to have some tough conversations, you're going to probably want to talk about both expectations and the goals of your chapter, and how what you're holding them accountable to is having an impact on that. Because that is a much easier conversation than saying, you've missed meetings, what's wrong with you? You've missed meetings, and unfortunately, you haven't been at these recruitment events, and we're really counting on you to help us meet this goal, right? So thinking about those things, and it's a very different conversation that feels less weighty if you're the one having it. So I always say expectations are like the floor, right? That's the floor. That's the minimum that we need to be doing. That's what's expected of us. Where goals are more like the ceiling, and that ceiling can sometimes go up, and sometimes we can maybe not touch it, but we get real close. And maybe sometimes we found stairs to go up to the second floor that we didn't even know existed. But they help us aim for where we're going, but we have to have a strong foundation of expectations to get there, right? So thinking about those a little bit differently and knowing that they're different is very important. So, before you have any type of accountability conversation, one of the best ways that you can infuse empathy into kind of accountability and holding people responsible for goals and expectations is just doing check-ins regularly that aren't tied to someone messing up. They could be tied to somebody doing a really great job. Oh my gosh, you met this goal early. Can you tell me how you did that? Or I really noticed that you've done XYZ really well. I want to know more about that. So regular check-in and feedback opportunities allow you to, as a leader to learn about things and check in with people to understand what's going on before you need an accountability conversation, right? It should be centered on the work, those expectations, those goals. The big thing, and I think we're all guilty of this as leaders from time to time. There's times where we probably always thought things are great, we're rocking and rolling. This person is crushing it, and then you come into them and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Not well. And you learn all of these things, and you've learned that they've been struggling and they've been really grinding away at Kappa Kappa Psi, but it's come at the detriment of their class, or it's come at the detriment of them being able to practice and be a good musician. And you get the opportunity to show that empathy of like, yes, I want you to do well in Kappa Kappa Psi, but it shouldn't come at the sacrifice of these other things. You've told me that they're important, and how can we learn to balance that better, and like what do you need from me to help you balance that better? I want you to do well in all of these things, not just this one thing. And really ask how you can support them. And I would say you can use formal and informal structures. So professionally, like I have one-on-one meetings with the people I supervise every other week. Like they know they have a time with me. It is in the calendar. We're going to check in. We're going to do those things. But at the same time, like if we're at a meeting together, I'm like, hey, let's walk back together. And I'm just like, what's up? What's up? How's it going? And just getting those opportunities. Once again, I always talk about the extroversion of myself and how that's just who I am as a human being, to acknowledge that these things about just having conversations and approaching people are very easy for me, and very much how I'm wired as a human being. I understand if it might be hard for you. So I think that's why naming it and saying this is a way that you can do that as a leader. And a lot of times it's less intimidating than like a formal meeting. Just to be like, hey, how are you? Somebody that I see every day at band. What's going on? Or how did that program go? I hated that I missed it. How did it go? You know, things like that are really easy ways to do this. And it's just a way to show empathy and investment in people and the work that they're doing for the organization. And I think we can all agree that at some point in our life and at some point in our work, whether that's in the fraternity or in something else, a person that is our leader or supervisor just saying, "Hey, how are you?" meant more to me than they would ever know. And it really helped me think about something, or it helped me understand that they actually do want to know how I'm doing. So you don't know how much of an impact it can make just to give somebody an informal kind of hello. So the importance of checking in is great because it gives you information, or maybe the ability to have a tiny conversation or do a course correction before it gets worse, or find out about a problem that they need help solving that you can solve before it grows. It's just a really good opportunity. So really using those check-in times to hopefully kind of cut things off at the pass before they miss a big deadline or have a big problem is something that's really easy to do. So what happens when it's time for accountability? Um, it is hard for people, and I acknowledge that. My people with the thumbs down, it's okay. It is hard for people. It used to be very hard for me, and as somebody who really struggled with. So here's the things that you need to know. Not holding someone accountable is kind of like uh, a wound you don't treat. It just gets worse. So you need to do it in a timely manner. So when you know about something, the sooner you can have that conversation, the sooner you can do it, the better it's going to be. Because if you have a person that has missed 2 meetings, and you have a conversation after those 2 meetings versus, I don't know if we should, and then all of a sudden they've missed 8 meetings, that's a whole different conversation that is a lot harder, right? It's also, you should know that you can do this because if you did those other things, you've had conversations about expectations and goals. You've talked to everybody about it. You've documented it. You shared it. Everybody had the opportunity to give feedback on that. Everybody had the opportunity to say, hey, I agree. I don't agree. Let's change this. We voted. This is where we are. I understand that you don't agree. It's still an expectation, but everybody else, that's the way democracy works, and chapters work. So you've had those conversations and you've already discussed what happens when those were not met, right? So there's no mystery. So those things that a lot of times give us anxiety about these kind of start to fall away. You are going to infuse empathy into this process. For that individual that's sitting across from you, sometimes there's real reasons why people miss or they miss meetings or they've missed a deadline or they've done something wrong that is really big and you want to support them. But at the same time, you're also showing empathy to the impact that they've had around them. You have to show that empathy to the rest of your chapter, and things like that. So you can do this if you do all that pre-work first. You can do this. It becomes a lot easier. And what we're going to do is kind of just walk through what this conversation could look like. And I'm going to highlight the point times where you lean more into accountability, maybe you lean more into empathy. So this conversation should be one-on-one. It's going to be framed around expectations and goals. You're going to just share very clearly. This is what was missed. This is the impact that it had. You're going to allow them to respond without interruption. You're going to acknowledge what they have said and seek to understand. You're going to plan a path forward. And then we're going to go back to my favorite phrase of the night. You're going to document that and share it to them via email. So, really, these are the building blocks of these conversations. One on one, you're not framing it around them as a person, like you're a bad person. You missed 4 meetings. You missed 4 meetings, and that's something that we all agreed as a chapter that you could only miss 2, right? Whatever that is. You're going to share clearly because you missed these 4 meetings, this is how it affected other people, or these are the service projects that you miss, and other people had to pick up that slack. You're going to let them talk about it. You're going to try to understand it and then plan the path forward. So this is kind of just like a document about a sample way these conversations could run. And we're just going to kind of walk through it briefly. So the scenario that I created pretty quickly was a president addressing a secretary. And it's all about late minutes. The secretary's not doing her minutes on time, and the president really needs to address that. So the president's going to set the tone. Thank you for meeting with me. I want to talk about expectations for this secretary role and make sure we're aligned. Make sure that I still understand that we're all in the same place. Minutes are expected to be sent within 24 to 48 hours after meetings. Our goal is to make sure members have timely information so they don't miss deadlines. So once again, this is what we've said. These are the expectations. This is why it's an expectation. This is the goal that we have. The behavior. The last few sets of minutes weren't sent on time. So we're talking about this is what happened. Everybody knows it. Because of that, some members didn't have meeting info and missed the dues deadline. This affects them in the chapter. Like now we have to pay late fees. We didn't get everything in, yada, yada, yada. So what's been going on for you and listening to their perspective? So they say their reason, whatever that is. What I'm hearing is that right? I understand that. So affirming what they said, and I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, this has to happen. Like it's an expectation, you agree it's an expectation. What would help you do that? Right? And then they kind of plan on this forward, clear deadline, communication if they're going to be delayed, quick check in after the next meeting to make sure they have all the information. If this doesn't happen, we're going to escalate the situation to the next level and that they have your support, right? So maybe this is the first time, we're going to give them another chance. We've got a good plan moving forward, but if it doesn't keeps happening, we're going to escalate the situation and they have your support. So I can see the peppering of empathy and accountability in this conversation, mainly because I wrote it. But to help you kind of see that, color coding. Well, this is what happens when you supervise Panhellenic sorority women for 6 years. They teach you how to color code immaculately. So if you look at this conversation, anywhere that's highlighted in this yellowy color is really about empathy. If you're colorblind, I'm really sorry. Probably should have picked much more different colors. If it is in the orange color, it is accountability. So this statement on the left-hand side, I want to talk to you about the expectations for the secretary role. That's a very clear accountability line. Setting those minutes are expected to be set at this time. Our goal is to make sure we're talking about accountability. The few minutes you've sent have been late. Accountability. Now, empathy is showing empathy in that number 4 to your chapter. This is how it affected people. I have empathy for the other people in our chapter and who we lead, and you need to understand that, and I understand what they have told me. Um, and then shifting that empathy to them. What's been going on? How is that happening? Allowing them the time to talk. I'm hearing, I understand that. Yes, that sounds like it's been very hard for you, or I understand that these were the limitations that you had, whatever those would be. But at the same time, this has to happen. So, how can we do that? What would help you meet the deadline? So, what would help you is very empathetic. Like, what would help you meet this deadline? That is accountability in that last statement. And then, even in your action steps, we know the deadline, we know that the quick check-in after the next meeting, that is about empathy. Like, hey, I just want to check in. You got what you need. We're on the same page. And really want to make sure you're successful. You said you want to be successful, and you said I could help you this way doing that. And then always letting them know you have their support. So it's not always about being, quote, the bad guy. It's just about being the one that reframes the conversation to make sure what we set our expectations and goals are happening. You missed that. I want to support you in doing that. How can I do that? And it's a much lighter lift than you think you're going to get somebody in trouble or you're going to get them kicked out of their office. Or, no, that's not necessarily worst case scenario. It's not about catastrophizing this. It can be just a really good conversation. And you might learn something really hard that they have been going through. They could have had a death in the family. They could have been, let's say, somebody like broke into their house and stole their laptop. Like, I don't know. There's all these things that really could be about this that are that could have really legitimately affected their ability to do minutes for like 2 weeks, and then they're ready to jump back in and are ready to help you out. So it's not just about you did wrong, fix it. It's about you did wrong. Tell me why. How can I help you? I'm invested in you as a leader. I want you to be successful. Now let's do what we need to do to make sure that you and the chapter can be successful. So we talk about the path forward, and those could come in a variety of ways. Sometimes it is just about reinforce or adjust expectations and goals. Sometimes you realize an expectation isn't real, and that you do need to change that, and that's okay. Or the goal is just not where you need to be going, and we need to change that. Maybe you bring on additional support, and that could be um, a younger member who wants to learn more about that role. And that could be temporary. Maybe that person just needs to kind of take 2 weeks to tap out to go home and be with family, or they have a medical situation. They just need somebody to cover responsibilities for 5, 6 days. So maybe you could bring in support. Always about improving communication, making sure that they understand, like, hey, if something's going on, just let us know. And really let us just be more communicative about that. Always acknowledge what happens if it continues and document that and share it. Like, this isn't letting somebody off the hook. It is saying, hey, I'm here to support you. This is still an expectation. If it doesn't happen, this is our next step, and things like that. Sometimes people resign, and that's okay. Maybe they resign from a leadership. Maybe there are people who determine, I need to go. I can't be an active member. I can be conditional. I can, reduce my commitments at this time. Sometimes people choose not to pay dues or come back. We don't want that, but it happens. And resigning is not bad. Life gets big sometimes and circumstances change. Sometimes we have all made commitments and then things have changed in our lives and we're like, whoa, I need to back away. Or whoa, I really need to focus in that priority. Or I need to put my time. This class I thought that was going to be a walk in the park is really hard. And I need to change and really focus on that class. That's okay. And telling them that that is okay is a huge relief to someone because a lot of times people are just looking for permission. They don't want to let you down. They don't want to not meet their expectations. And you saying, listen, it's okay if you can't do this right now. I understand that. And just letting them know that they still have a place in Kappa Kappa Psi. It doesn't mean that you're not a brother. It doesn't mean that you're not in the organization. It just means that your circumstances changed, or this was an expectation you thought you were prepared to meet and you weren't, and you just want to go back to being a member. That's fine. We would love to have you as a member and still do those things. But a lot of times it's just saying it's okay if you need to give them that permission to do that. The worst and the hardest step is removal, whether that's removal from office or removing somebody from a chapter, and that's a reality. Um, that is really hard. I think um, I always say like I'm okay talking about removing a member, but I'm talking about that from a very large place of power, right? As a national officer, I voted to remove chapters and voted to remove members. So like it's a conversation I'm comfortable having. Not a lot of people are as like just undergraduates. I wasn't comfortable about having it as an undergraduate, but there are processes in place in Kappa Kappa Psi if you need to get to that point where you have a member that is consistently not met expectations, not met standards. You've tried all these things to remedy them. You've had accountability conversations. There's a process to remove them. But part of those things that you've done before that is told them that you've done enough where we might be talking about removing your membership. Here's what that process looks like. The next time this happens, this is what this will mean. And it's not going to be a surprise for them. So if somebody does need to be removed from an office or removed from the chapter, there are processes within Kappa Kappa Psi to do that. You have support around that, whether that's from sponsors, folks, district governors can talk to you about that, national leaders can talk to you about that. So there is a process to do that, but just really make sure you follow the process because the process is designed to protect you and the member, and you're giving them the opportunity to say those things as well in that process. So that's really a big opportunity that you need to follow up on. So I always say these are both so important. And what I want to say is empathy builds trust. Accountability builds credibility, right? A lot of the things that people were talking about as accountability was, say what you do, do what you say is basically like that. Empathy builds trust. You feel like you really are valued and those people trust you to be a leader. But if you're not holding anybody accountable, then they don't really have credibility for you. This is what they call the Blake Mountain managerial scale. And if you look on the axes there, it's talking about high accountability and high empathy. So if you're in an organization that has low accountability and low empathy, this was a simplified version of it. They have different things, but this person called it a nightmare, which I would agree. Like basically, it is the wild, wild west out there. Nobody is caring for one another. Nobody has to do any work, and usually that's a chapter that's eventually just going to crumble and fall. It's going to fall into complete disarray. But if you have no empathy and high accountability, it's basically boot camp. It's about results. We don't care. We got to get it done. We're not even acknowledging you as a human. You're a cog in the machine to make things work and to help us do what we need to do. If we have only empathy and no accountability, I love this term daycare. I just think about people running around and screaming and everybody hugging everyone and like, I'm really worried about you as a person. Watch me throw this ball. Boom. Like it is just not results focused at all. It is just kind of chaos that might be fun for like 5, 10 minutes and then eventually like, what are we doing? Where are we going? What's happening? Instead you just see people screaming and hugging and running around. And then they classified high accountability, high empathy as paradise. You have a group of people that are bonded together, that care for one another, care for the work, and they know that they're going to be held accountable to doing that work because it's important to them, important to everybody else, right? So thinking about how to have both of those as high for a leader is very, very important. So that was my 50 minutes of content that I had. And what I want to do now, I'll put this up here, which is our last screen, but I wanted to open it up to questions that folks have, comments, things that they want to put out there. You can unmute yourself or put it in the chat. And we have 10 minutes. Yes, those are just fun pictures of me and brothers. Most of them are for National Convention, except for the one with me, Nick Rohr, Anthony at a football game at Delaware. That's our friend's daughter, who is our friends are a married couple in Tau Beta Sigma and Kappa Kappa Psi. That's their daughter who goes to Delaware. That's in the marching band. We all went to watch her perform. But the rest are from convention. So, and Jack in his pink sweatshirt that I like to post whenever I can. Josh, can you email me? Can we email you for a copy of this presentation? Joshua, if you registered, I'm going to get that registration list from Bong and I will send a follow-up for sure so that you all have it. And I made like a little one-page summary and I'll send you the slides as well. Absolutely. Kristen, what you got for me?
Well, I feel like sometimes I see accountability conversations get centralized in the chapter president. Everybody wants to run to the president to have the accountability
Sure.
conversation. Do you have any suggestions on kind of, democratizing that piece of it and helping the whole chapter feel like they can talk to each other and have those accountability conversations?
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of that, Kristen, is going back to what I said, the importance of talking about expectations for everybody as a group and goals as everybody as a group, because so many people think that the only person with knowledge and the ultimate say so of those expectations is just that leader or just that president, or maybe the only person who can talk to me about the portfolio of membership is just the VPM, right? But if you're having those open conversations where everybody understands what those are, hopefully, you know, me as a brother and you as a brother, if Kristen, if I've noticed you missed a couple meetings, I'll be like, Kristen, you missed a couple meetings. Like, what's going on, right? Like we said, this is what we're about. Or you haven't been to 3 service projects. Can you talk to me about that? I think a lot of it is built upon having really good trust within an organization, which is tough. But then also just clearly saying to each other, like, hey, it's okay to check in on somebody, or it's okay to say, hey, I've noticed you've been missing. Is everything okay? And like doing some of those informal things that maybe we talked about um, as just brother to brother. But once again, I always talk about lack of knowledge leads to a lot of times two things: overreaction, which I have to go to the president for everything, or underreaction. Well, this isn't my job, so I'm not going to do anything. So having those open conversations can cut down on those over and under reactions and maybe empower folks to be more open to have those one-on-one. Kayla, Alpha Delta, Ohio. What's up?
We just recently had to like go through like removing a member because of accountability issues. And so how at the next meeting do we like approach that? It's like super awkward and keeping high expectations with also like being like, it's not just the expectations.
Yeah, it is super awkward. I think just acknowledging that it is awkward is totally fair. And I mean, I think for me, it is about one, we want to show that person respect, right? We're not going to put their business out on the streets and you know things that maybe you learn from that process or whatever. But I think it's also important to just simply acknowledge, like, hey, they probably voted on it. Like, you know, we all voted. This is where we landed. And then I think Kayla framing it in those behaviors, those expectations, and those goals. As a chapter, we agreed that all members would do X, Y, Z. And we knew that if we don't do XYZ, these are the things that could happen. This person didn't do those things, and we went through the process. I think the big thing is, Kayla, saying we don't enjoy that. We don't want to do that. So if you are worried about what the expectations are, come talk to me. If you are concerned that you're not going to meet them, or if something's going on, talk to me early before we have to get to that point again. And really putting some ownership on your chapter to maybe have those members come and talk to you, come talk to leadership, talk to other brothers, and really putting it in that space of these are the behaviors. If you're having trouble meeting those behaviors, we want to help you so that we don't have to do this again, is a way to move that conversation and just acknowledge it from a place of this happened. We don't want it happen to have, we don't want to have to do that with other people. We don't want it to happen again. So let's talk about how we can make sure if you're in a spot where you're worried about it, that you get the support you need. Shout out Paula. That's great. Any other questions from folks or comments? You can throw them out there. They say wait 7 seconds. I feel good about that. All right, so I'm gonna go to the very prescriptive closing script that Bonko has given me and make sure I give you all the information that you need to continue to engage in our National Month of Leadership. Thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciated the engagement in the chat, throwing the emojis out there. The things that you put out there have been really helpful, and it's been good for me. It's allowed me to think about things differently, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you to Broco and the rest of the committee for allowing me to be a part of this. As we said, this is just one piece of the month. We encourage you to continue engaging with other programming happening throughout February. There's other live sessions, weekly reflection prompts, leadership speaker highlights, and other activities designed to spark conversation and growth as you continue on your journey with leadership that you can use, take back to your chapters, other brothers, alumni organizations, whatever that is for you. If you liked this session, hey, there's another one next week. Share the posts that are out there, invite people to join, host a watch party for your chapter, maybe just like set up a laptop, say, everybody come over, let's have dinner and watch one of these. And it's a great opportunity to build some camaraderie around this. Just as a reminder, if you're working toward your Founders Circle Level 1 certification, you must complete the Level 1 questionnaire and attend a district convention. Both pieces are required to meet that, so you'll get more information in your email about next steps around that. And if you have questions, you can just email that founderscircle@kksci.org. As I said, conventions are around the corner. I know that I will be, I believe, at Midwest and Southwest for sure. I think those are my two. I need to look up. They're on my calendar, which I can't access right now because all of my devices are looking at you, beautiful humans. So please come to attend our conventions. We're excited for you to be there. Other speakers will be there that are part of the Founders Circle. You can learn more about them online. Great humans who are committed to the fraternity, committed to helping you and brothers grow, and really make sure you register for district conventions. District conventions are where I fell in love the most with Kappa Kappa Psi, so I hope that you get the opportunity to connect with those. I know it's tough sometimes, but if you can get there, get there. Before we wrap up, here's a reminder. We have, as I said, sessions next week and the week after. We hope you continue to engage with us. And then the close, it's a very profound statement. I'm going to read what Broco has wrote word for word. Are we ready? I can't be as articulate as him. It's leadership is a lifelong journey, and every step you take towards reflection and growth matters. So take one idea, one question, or one takeaway from today and think about how you'll put it into action this week. Thank you for being a part of this work, for serving with intention, and for continuing to build a stronger brotherhood. I appreciate all you great humans. Have a wonderful evening. I'm going to go pet my dogs and go to bed. And thank you all very much for joining us tonight. So great to see you. Good seeing familiar faces. Kristen, Ike, Paula. Yay. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you
Have a great
all.
evening.